All right, if you're a leader and you feel like you're constantly pushing a boulder uphill, this one's for you. Today, we're going to talk about a framework that helps you stop just running your company and start actually redesigning the whole system it lives in. It's about moving from just executing to having real, lasting influence.
So let me ask you something straight up. Think about your strategy right now, your biggest projects. Are you building one massive battleship? The kind that's meant to dominate everything? Or are you building a whole fleet of quick, nimble little speedboats? Seriously, the answer to that says a ton about how you approach change.
Okay, Act 1, the problem. And look, the frustration here is so real. If you're a senior leader, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You pour all this time, all this money into these huge top-down initiatives, and what happens? The results are just painfully slow. That right there is the big limit of the monolith. So this old school way of doing things, we can call it the vertebrate model. Just picture a big company with a strong central spine, right? It's powerful, sure, it's organized, but that same strength is also its weakness. It makes it super rigid, slow to adapt, and honestly, kind of fragile when something unexpected hits. Yep, that's the battleship. And listen, this isn't just some abstract idea. There's a real story about a foundation that spent billions of dollars over 2 decades trying to fix education from the top down. And the result? After all that time and money, the needle barely budged. It was like they were trying to steer a massive battleship with a tiny canoe paddle. It just doesn't work. Okay, so if the big top-down battleship approach is broken, then what's the answer? Well, this brings us to a totally different way of thinking, inspired by none other than Paul Graham from Y Combinator. And it's not just some new strategy, it's a complete shift in how you see your role. It's what we're calling the clever hack. So what is system hacking? It's about seeing your startup or your project as more than just a business. It's a high-leverage, bottom-up move designed to shake things up. The goal isn't just about making money. No, the real goal is the fun, the intellectual thrill of finding a clever way to break the unreigning rules and totally change the game.
And this really breaks it down, right? You've got the vertebrate model on one side. That's our battleship, all about building one giant thing. But then, on the other side, you have the jellyfish model. It's not centralized, it's a distributed network. Its whole goal is to mass-produce innovation with lots of small, independent teams. It's not rigid, it's adaptable, it's resilient, it actually gets stronger from chaos.
And this idea comes straight from the source, Paul Graham. He never saw Y Combinator as just another venture capital firm. To him, it was a hack, a systemic intervention, a machine built not just to fund a few companies, but to change the entire culture of how we build things, to speed up a massive economic shift. That is what it means to think like a system architect. Okay, theory is great, but how do you actually do this? Let's get practical. How do you stop being the captain of the battleship and start being the architect of the whole system? It really boils down to 3 big shifts in how you think. First, you've got to think like a system architect, not just a manager. Second, you have to embrace the hack. Always be on the lookout for those clever, lopsided ways to get an edge. And third, you need to measure your ripple effect. What's the total impact you're having, not just the number on your P&L? So let's bring this home. Right now, in your world, what are those unwritten rules? You know the ones. The things everyone just does because that's how it's done. What would happen if you just broke one of them on purpose? And what about this? Instead of pouring all your resources into a couple of huge projects, how could you mass produce innovation? How could you run, say, a dozen cheap, fast experiments? What would it look like to build your own little UI combinator inside your company? Okay, last question, and be honest with yourself. When you really look at your organization, its structure, its culture, is it a rigid vertebrate, or is it more like a jellyfish? Distributed, adaptable, maybe even a little chaotic, but in a good way. All right, we've talked about the problem. We've talked about the framework. Now comes the most important part, what you can actually do about this on Monday morning. Here it is, your Monday morning action. This week, I want you to find one small, maybe kind of weird internal project, something that already has a little bit of momentum. Don't write a 50-page plan. Just give that team a tiny budget, shield them from all the corporate nonsense, and give them 3 months to see what happens. In other words, stop designing the battleship and go fund a speedboat. Look, building a great company, that's table stakes. That's the goal, right? But this framework is really about something bigger. What if your job isn't just to win the game? What if your real job is to change the rules of the game itself? What if you could actually change the shape of the world you live in?